This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Telly Edwards. Tonight's top stories. Donald Trump doubles down on his threat to annex Greenland, floating the option of using the U.S. military. While the American leader also reportedly demanding Venezuela cut ties with its allies, including biggest benefactor China, and partner exclusively with the U.S. on oil. Myung looks to Xi Jinping to mediate efforts to engage North Korea. The South Korean leader wrapping up a trip aimed at resetting ties with Beijing. And China ramps up pressure on Japan, opening an anti-dumping probe into a crucial chip-making material just a day after restricting exports of dual-use goods. Ahead on the bulletin, China's expertise with humanoid robots on display at one of the world's biggest consumer electronics shows. And populations are on decline in East Asia, but governments are spending more to defend their people. Why the mismatch? The White House says that President Trump is considering a range of options to pursue control of Greenland, including military action. Washington says Mr. Trump and his team are discussing a whole range of options, such as buying Greenland from Denmark or forming a free association with the territory. Officials say the president views acquiring the self-governing Danish territory as a national security priority to deter adversaries in the Arctic. Mr. Trump had previously justified his stance with the need to counter the presence of Russian and Chinese ships in the region. Now, he argued that Denmark has not done enough to protect U.S. troops stationed there. Greenland and Denmark have called for urgent talks with the U.S. to, quote, clear up certain misunderstandings over the territory. They have repeatedly said Greenland is not for sale. Well, top U.S. aide Stephen Millard earlier dismissed Danish sovereignty, saying that nobody would challenge the U.S. military might if it attempted to take Greenland through military means. Well, we've got Will Denslow for CNA, joins us live from Brussels. Will, first up, what has been the EU's response and how will Europe balance defending Greenland's sovereignty without antagonizing Donald Trump?
Well, we've heard from the French foreign minister saying that he'll be discussing just that very point with counterparts from Poland and Germany to discuss, should the United States go through with that threat, how exactly would Europe respond and how they would balance this, of course, incredibly intricate relationship and closely knit relationship with the United States, whilst also protecting European sovereignty. Now, these comments from the French minister come as we've seen a joint statement released by a number of European leaders in which it called for security to be absolutely collective and also in keeping with the principles of both the UN Charter and international law. Important to note that this is the same UN Charter that there have been accusations by some that the United States could have violated in its actions in Venezuela. So while we were having these conversations a year ago, when the Trump administration was threatening to take Greenland, there are growing concerns here in Europe that perhaps what we've seen in Venezuela could suggest that the US is serious on acting on its convictions. But of course, certainly this is certainly preemptive at this stage, and Europe says it certainly wants to work hand in glove with the United States in making sure that the Arctic is secure.
The bloc, can they take any measures at all, or if anything, to prevent the U.S. from acquiring Greenland? And how are they likely to try to resolve this row?
When it comes to resolving it, well, we've seen in this statement from several European nations that they are trying to make the case to Washington that they are taking steps to take collective security very seriously, to show that Denmark, as well as other European powers, are doing its part in mitigating these concerns that the United States has when it comes to this apparent military build-up from the likes of China and Russia in the region. They say they're doing this by increasing their presence, their investment and their activity in Greenland and in the wider area. But of course, when it comes, if that can be seen as the carrot, big questions are to see what could conceivably the stick be. We've just seen the European response ultimately suggesting that Greenland and its future is a matter that must be decided for Greenland and Greenland's people, and that any decisions involving both Denmark and Greenland must be made by those entities themselves, and this is not a matter for any kind of external actor.
All right, good talking to you, Will Denslow for CNA in Brussels. Well, U.S. media say that the White House has given Venezuela's interim leader a list of demands that must be met before the country can sell its oil again. ABC News says the U.S. wants Venezuela to kick out China, Russia, Iran and Cuba and cut economic ties with them. According to the New York Times, Washington wants Caracas to expel official advisors, military personnel and spies from those countries. But some diplomats would be allowed to stay. This would represent a full political realignment for Venezuela, which has relied on these four allies for economic and security stability for more than 2 decades. Well, Caracas must also partner exclusively with Washington on oil production and favor the U.S. when selling heavy crude oil. Since last month, Venezuela has been unable to sell much of its crude due to U.S. military blockade, and this is threatening the country's economic lifeline. President Trump has unveiled a plan to refine and sell up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil, estimated to be worth nearly $2 billion. Mr. Trump says he will control proceeds from the sale of the oil and use it to benefit both Americans and Venezuelans. Also, what's at stake for China goes beyond oil supplies from Venezuela. It stands to lose billions in investments and its influence in Latin America. Since 2007, China has poured $62 billion into Venezuela, or more than half of all Chinese lending to Latin America. And in return, Venezuela would supply oil to China. Well, China takes in around 80% of Venezuela's oil exports, but much of the oil flow was debt repayment, not market purchases. Reports also show that Venezuelan oil account for just 4.5% of China's seaborne crude imports. But there is a key aspect of that trade that irks the U.S. Since 2017, Venezuela has been pricing oil in yuan rather than dollars. America's seizure of the oil reserves is a setback for Beijing's broader push to challenge the dominance of the greenback. The raid on Venezuela also hit Beijing's growing influence in Latin America, which the Trump administration sees as its turf. Countries may rethink their collaborations with China, including its signature Belt and Road Initiative, which focuses on infrastructure building.
China has been a fairly smart actor, particularly after the U.S. during the first Trump administration sort of removed itself from Latin America. And it has come to the governments and has said, do you need money for infrastructure? Do you need to build a port? Do you need to build a bridge? We're going to help you with loans for that. So for many countries, it is going to be very difficult to just quickly undo those relationships with China. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of pressure from the U.S. to try and move away.
Well, for more, CNA senior correspondent Tan Yuguan joins us live from Shanghai. Yuguan, what exactly has been China's response to all these reports that, Donald Trump is demanding Caracas cut ties with Beijing?
Well, given the blatant nature of the American demands, I think it comes as no surprise that China has condemned those demands. In a regular Chinese Foreign Ministry briefing, the spokesperson emphasized that cooperation between China and Venezuela is cooperation between sovereign states, protected by international law and the laws of both countries. Let's take a listen at what else the spokesperson said this afternoon.
美国悍然对委内瑞拉动武，并要求委内瑞拉处置自身石油资源时美国优先，是典型的霸凌行径，严重违反国际法，严重侵犯委内瑞拉主权，严重损害委内瑞拉人民的权利。中方对此强烈谴责。我要强调的是，中国和其他国家在委内瑞拉的合法权益必须得到保护。
The spokesperson was also asked by a reporter from China Arab TV on the U.S. State Department statement claiming that the Western Hemisphere is the U.S. hemisphere and that President Trump would not stand idly by while American security is threatened. In response, the spokesperson said that the dividing of spheres of influence and creating geopolitical confrontation will not make a country safer, much less bring peace to the world. Instead, he says, common security and cooperative security are the only sustainable security. Otelli?
So, Yuguan, again, all eyes are on China. I mean, how likely will we see Beijing, step in, help Cuba, its other close ally in the region that now appears to be squarely in Donald Trump's sights?
Historically, Cuba has depended on cheap oil supplies from Venezuela for its energy needs. But in recent years, Mexico has overtaken Venezuela as Cuba's top oil supplier. Meanwhile, China has also in the past helped Cuba with updating its energy infrastructure to include green energy like solar, a sector of which China is a leader. So China is likely to continue or perhaps even ramp up support on that front. Quietly, is a low-hanging fruit for Beijing, given the excess supply of solar panels and the excess supply of solar energy experts in China. It costs Beijing very little to provide Cuba with that sort of support. But would China go beyond that sort of economic support? From a geopolitical standpoint, very unlikely. Militarily, China doesn't have the means to extend its reach to Cuba in the Atlantic, given the de facto American control of the Panama Canal. China also doesn't have the desire to do so. China's interests in Latin America and the Caribbean is largely economic. China is looking for trade, not trouble. There were some hints on what actions China might take, or rather might not take, in the regular foreign ministry briefing earlier today. A Bloomberg reporter asked what further actions China will take or support it will provide, given that so far the spokesperson only mentioned diplomatic support. While Cuba and Venezuela may hope China will provide economic support. In response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson says China will continue to strengthen cooperation with both countries and other Latin American and Caribbean countries. As for specific cooperation or support provided, they need to be jointly agreed upon by China and the relevant countries. So, those are the words of the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. As far as the Foreign Ministry is concerned, it seems that there's yet no directive about any specific additional Chinese support in response to the American actions and the demands of late. From the sound of the response, it also means that, China is likely to continue to condemn U.S. actions, both unilaterally and through world bodies like the UN. It will continue to condemn the U.S. for undermining international world order. It may continue or extend some economic help when asked, but it's very unlikely to want to confront the U.S. head-on.
Many thanks for that report. CNA's senior correspondent Tan Yu-guan in Shanghai. Now, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says that a freeze in North Korea's nuclear program is feasible and has called on China to help bring Pyongyang back to the negotiating table. Mr. Lee laid out a plan for the North to pause its nuclear activities in exchange for undefined compensation. He also urged Chinese President Xi Jinping to mediate for peace on the Korean Peninsula. The South Korean leader says that Mr. Xi acknowledged Seoul's efforts with Pyongyang and has called for patience.
关于半岛，我想告诉你的是呢，维护半岛和平稳定是符合各方共同利益的。中方将继续以自己的方式为此发挥建设性作用。
President Lee is wrapping up a 4-day state visit to China, seeking to restore ties between the two nations. Now, both sides signed $44 million in new export deals and dozens of memoranda of understanding, and also agreed to clearly divide maritime borders in disputed areas of the West Sea. Mr. Lee also announced working-level consultations on China's effective ban on Korean culture. Seoul is reaping some benefits amid Beijing's row with Tokyo. Media reports say South Korea is the top destination for Chinese tourists during the New Year holiday, with experts expecting foreign arrivals this year, led by Chinese visitors, to exceed 20 million. Our break's next, but coming up on East Asia Tonight, China moving to regulate major e-commerce platforms to curb the fierce competition between shopping platforms. Plus, Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD racing ahead of rival Tesla in Europe.
From vibrant cities to ancient empires, journey across Asia's most captivating landscapes and the stories they hold. This January on CNA. Discover how the new generation is transforming life after dark, from drone-lit skylines to immersive cultural parks.
就我会觉得价值不一定是你要产出东西，有可能是你给了别人一些快乐。
Meet the innovators powering China's night boom. In Asian communities, salt is a source of a rich tapestry of artisanal and innovative culinary craft and production. Explore the ingenuity and traditions that elevate this everyday mineral into a cultural treasure in Salt of the Earth. And travel back in time with Peter Lee.
Some years ago, this place was considered too dangerous even for tourists.
To unravel the secrets behind Asia's ancient kingdoms and the legacies that shape the region's identity in The Mark of Empire, Kingdoms of the Sea. This January on CNA.
More than half of China's adults are overweight or obese.
他们都说你这么胖，这个座位会坐坏。
就我走到电梯的话，就已经喘得不行了。
It's a heavy risk for Asia's largest economy.
If the whole society is aging, we need healthy young people, workers, and laborers.
对国家来讲，它会占用很多的公共医疗成本，增加社会负担。
Can China reverse the decades-long trend of rising obesity? Insight Thursday on CNA.
The CNA Summit 2026. Today's leaders face converging pressures, shifting geopolitics and capital flows, digital and AI acceleration, and rising calls for inclusive growth. How do leaders turn capital into viable projects and sustain execution across Indonesia's and the regional markets? The CNA Summit 2026, coming soon in February. Organised by MediaCorp. Main partner, Singtel. Hello Possibilities.
Hello again. You're watching East Asia Tonight, and we've got Roland Lim standing by with the latest in business news. So, Roland, there's been a dual-use export ban, and now we are seeing rare earth curbs. So, in a nutshell, are we seeing this sort of new trade war flashpoint between China and Japan?
Well, China is certainly playing hardball after Prime Minister Takaichi's comments on Taiwan. Analysts warn a year-long rare earth squeeze could shave nearly 0.5% off Japan's GDP. Now, China has announced an anti-dumping probe into imports from Japan of a key chemical used to making semiconductors, a day after it banned the export of goods with potential military users. Japan expressing deep displeasure on China's ban. It is urging Beijing to revoke the new export controls.
我が国のみをターゲットにした今般の措置というものは、国際的な慣行と大きく異なり、決して許容できず、極めて遺憾であります。外務省、経済産業省及び在中国大使館から中国側に対して、その旨の申し入れを行い、強く抗議するとともに、措置の撤回を求めたところであります。
The ban covers goods, software, and technologies with both civilian and military users, including certain rare earth elements essential to producing drones and computer chips. Now, that has sparked concerns in Japan over supply disruptions. More than 70% of Japan's rare earth imports come from China. Economists at Nomura Research Institutes warn the impact on Japan's economy could be extremely severe if rare earths are included in the controls. They estimate a 3-month ban could cost Japan $4.2 billion and shave off 0.1% of GDP. The move comes as China steps up pressure on Tokyo after Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi suggested back in November that Japan could respond militarily to an attack on Taiwan. Supply concerns boosting rare earth-related shares across the region. In Tokyo, Toyo Engineering, which makes technology to recover rare earths from the seabed, that jumped 20%. Cerium manufacturer Daiichi Kigenso, that surged more than 27%. Australian miner Lynas Rare Earths is also up more than 15%, and that's the most since July, with metal producer Australian Strategic Materials climbing more than 8%. Shares of Chinese rare earth producers, including China Rare Earth Resources and JL Mag Rare Earths, also rallying amid expectations of higher prices. Worries about potential supply chain issues for rare earths also weighing on automakers in Japan, with Toyota Motor dropping around 3%. Honda and Nissan also declining more than 2%. Those declines dragging the equity benchmarks lower. Japan's Nikkei 225 closing 1% in the red after a record close the previous session, while the broader topics slipping by 0.77%. China has unveiled new measures in hopes of cooling its intensifying e-commerce competition. The guidelines are set to take effect next month, and they follow official warnings over unruly competition that squeezed profit margins across the industry. Shares of Alibaba and other Chinese e-commerce firms dropped after the government announcement. Alibaba stock falling 4% in Hong Kong trade, leading the losses among its peers. JD.com down 1.56%. Short video platforms Kuaishou down nearly 3%, Bilibili 3.5% in the red. The new regulations include barring online platforms from forcing merchants to provide services of all goods at below cost. Now, other rules bar online influencers from making false claims. The new rules require platforms to protect consumers and user data. Beijing has heightened scrutiny of the country's retail industry, especially after Alibaba, JD and Meituan spent billions of dollars on subsidies and incentives to try to dominate the meal delivery business. Now, China is reportedly reviewing Meta's $2 billion purchase of AI platform Manus for possible technology export control violations. And that's amid intense rivalry between Beijing and Washington. Officials are assessing if Manus's relocation of staff and tech to Singapore and its subsequent sale to Meta required an export license under Chinese law. Experts suggest the need for a license could provide Beijing with an avenue to influence the transaction. Now, the Manus deal has drawn attention because officials are concerned it could incentivize Chinese startups to relocate out of the country to bypass domestic supervision. But Manus's core team moved to Singapore last year, leaving few clear options for Beijing to intervene if officials decide action is warranted. Meta plans to operate Manus's AI agent software and to integrate that technology into its own products. Turning to Chinese equities, Shanghai and Shenzhen closing almost flat but staying near their highest levels in more than 10 years, while Hong Kong shares, well, it pulled back after a three-day rally. Now, traders are cautious amid heightened tensions between China and Japan. But there's no stopping chip makers. Their gains outpacing the wider markets. Now, China's largest semiconductor equipment manufacturer, Naura Tech, jumped 7% in Shenzhen at one point. It is up 6% for the day. Other memory chip makers in Shanghai also soaring, including Advanced Microfabrication as well as Giga Device Semiconductor. Chips gains have been driving a solid start to the year for AI. The hype speeds up. But one analyst we spoke to warns of concentrated exposure in Asia that's raising some red flags.
Right, we have seen a huge rally, especially in the start of this year on the semiconductor side as well. So it's, again, more or less the same story as we have been seeing in 2025. What we are telling our clients is you have to own AI, but also size it right. I think that's really one of the key risks that certain investors are not really aware which kind of exposure they have have in AI, and especially if you look into Asia, as a good example is Korea, where you have two stocks making up more than 45% of the whole index being AI, which is also very highly correlated to the US. That's also where we advise our clients really to not only go into the semicon side, also look into the enablers, AI enablers, which we expect also to broaden out, so that you've really a more broader sense of sectors in a portfolio, and also such a sector such as medtech as an example, which also benefits from AI itself and not purely the hyperscaler and the semiconductors itself.
Chinese EV maker BYD has overtaken Tesla in Europe's two biggest EV markets, highlighting the growing pressure on the US car maker as competition intensifies. Now, BYD outsold Tesla last year in both Germany and the United Kingdom. In Germany, BYD registered more than twice as many new vehicles as Tesla in December. Now, for the full year, BYD sales surged eightfold to just over 23,000 units, while Tesla fell nearly 50% to around 19,000. BYD also pulled ahead in the UK, finishing the year with more than 51,000 registrations as compared to Tesla's 45,000. Globally, Tesla has lost its title as the world's top electric vehicle seller. Now, BYD delivered more than 2.2 million EVs last year. That's well ahead of Tesla. Chinese brands are gaining ground in Britain on lower prices, while Tesla faces tougher competition and mounting challenges across Europe. And I'll be back later with highlights from the CES in Las Vegas. For now, back to you, Telly.
Thanks, Roland. Looking forward to that. Well, for now, we're going to go for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, why East Asia's demographic crisis is making the region's countries spend more on their military. Well, Associate Professor Kay Koga from Singapore's Nanyang Technological University will be joining us to share his insights. A Chinese challenger to OpenAI is set to go public this week. Zhipu is listing in Hong Kong amid a surge of tech IPOs. We'll examine what its market debut means for the future of AI investing on the next Asia First.
Singapore, you've heard of it.
But do you know it? Explore our neighborhoods.
So I welcome you to Little India. See, I'm giving such a traditional vibe now.
Solita's wetland is like a hidden gem, man. This place is rich with wildlife.
It's tropical, it's vertical, it's wired.
If we cannot bring people out to experience it, can we perhaps bring the experience in?
Here, food isn't just eaten. It's chased, debated, and perfected.
This is what a perfect breakfast looks like in Singapore.
Get exclusive access to see how things work.
The super trees are fairly basic, but right on top is where the secret lies.
This is where artists, chefs, entrepreneurs, tastemakers call home.
This is for exciting times to come. Salud, amigo.
Discover the ins and outs.
And everything in between on Singapore Hour.
Biodiversity is booming, which is inviting for some local foragers and farmers who embrace edible wildlife.
We're the largest organic banana grower in Singapore.
This is a jam.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the mulberries are from the garden.
No, that's delicious.
Singapore is ramping up conservation efforts locally and across the region.
I really do love reptiles and finding out about them, so I really love my job.
Building must relate to the lives of the people.
目前还是一直要创新一些新的东西。我也不希望是人家把我看作是80岁的人。
There are those who dare to be different, who have made their mark in Singapore and beyond.
You have such big dreams, you want to change the world with your art.
Obviously, every fighter wants to win, so all you can do is to prepare yourself to win.
Hello again, this is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Donald Trump doubles down on his threat to annex Greenland, which may include the use of military force. France says it's working with partners on how to respond should the U.S. move to take over the territory. The American leader also demanding that Venezuela cuts off its traditional allies, including China and Russia, and partner exclusively with the U.S. on oil. Beijing has slammed Washington's blatant use of force as bullying. And Myung urges Xi Jinping to help mediate for peace on the Korean Peninsula as the South Korean leader wraps up a 4-day trip to China aimed at resetting ties with Beijing. East Asian population is aging quickly. Japan, South Korea, and China are entering uncharted demographic territory. Now, in part one of a two-part series, the latest episode of CNA Correspondent examines what is driving defense spending higher despite shrinking populations.
All across East Asia, major economies have steadily expanded the defense budgets over the past decade, and the trend is expected to continue. Japan has set a goal of raising defense spending to 2% of its GDP, overriding the long-standing 1% of GDP target. South Korea's 2026 defense spending is expected to hit a record, reaching 65.9 trillion won, or about $45 billion. China's defense budget has ballooned to 1.78 trillion yuan, or about $250 billion in 2025, from 720 billion yuan in 2013. Taiwan aims to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2030, from about 3% currently. Why haven't aging populations made East Asia more pacifist?
Generally speaking, expanding population has been associated with expansionary behavior of states. If you look at the shrinking population, it is not unrealistic to assume or anticipate that shrinking population will lead to a less aggressive policy.
There's this theory that as a population ages, they are less willing to go to war, they are more inclined to pacifist tendencies. I think that theory is not proving out in the East Asian region at all. I think we are seeing quite contrary to the opposite. We are seeing countries like China, Japan, and South Korea, for example, tuning up the rhetoric on military action, modernizing their respective military branches, and most of all, increasing their defense budget. So I think the threat perception plays a large part still on how people are willing to go to war.
Perceptions aside, analysts say the rise in defense spending across the region is also driven by a push to automate operations and develop smarter militaries as countries prepare for a significantly grayer future. South Korea, among others, has an ambitious defense goal despite manpower constraints.
첨단 기술을 보유한 스타트업 발굴과 R&D 투자로 방위 산업을 인공지능 시대의 주력 제조업으로 육성하고 방산 4대 강국의 발판을 마련할 것입니다.
There is a bit of a dynamic where countries are taking advantage of this particular window where they are able to automate as much of their processes as possible with technology, with automation, with AI, to seize some kind of advantage that they might have over their adversaries when the time comes that the population shrinkage or the population demography challenges are too big to overcome. 20 years ago, military modernization tend to focus on the tonnage of equipment produced. How many tanks can I buy? How many warships? How large are my warships? How many aircraft can I buy? But today we are seeing a lot more focus on automation. So among the East Asian countries, I think it is very clear that China is leading the way.
For more, let's bring in Associate Professor Kei Koga from the Public Policy and Global Affairs Program at Nanyang Technological University, joining us live from Singapore. Dr. Koga, so let's start with the ground sentiment. How much does public opinion act as a brake or an accelerator on military action? And what do we know whether young people, do they actually support the idea of fighting a war?
I don't have any exact statistics on the here, but I guess the narrative because of the tensions over the Northeast Asia, the flashpoints,
many the young people actually consider that they may actually face the certain kind of consequences in the future, like contingencies. In that sense, I think they are just kind of simulating. They are not actually considering the real war, but they are actually trying to think about the possibility for that. And then I don't think no one wants to actually see the war in the Northeast Asia because the cost is too high. But the thing is that as the technology advances and also the demographic changes, then people would think that there might be some kind of chance to win the war or like conflicts to some extent, and that creates the big debates over the possibility of the conflict.
So, Dr. Koga, when manpower shrinks, does the military actually get weaker, or does it in fact get more dangerous because it's now leaning harder on tech and automation?
The demography is the one factor that we could actually think about when it comes to the tensions and conflicts between the states. And then generally speaking, the theory of the demography said that if you are facing the aging society, then the aging society is not going to actually willing to fight a war with each other because the society is trying to support the more kind of pensions or welfare program. And then they don't want to actually see the government spending the more in the military. But then the AI and also those kind of the defense technology advances, then it becomes much easier, or they could actually offset the costs of the demographic change. And then that actually creates the calculation really, really difficult to figure out. And that's why like the people are actually kind of simulating and also thinking about what's going to happen like in the future over the Northeast Asia.
Yeah, so let's just look into the future. And do you think, 20 years, 30 years from here, do you think Japan still counts as a major power by then? And what's going to be the single biggest factor that decides it?
I think there are many factors that we have to think about in terms of calculating the future of Japan. Japan is facing really serious demographic change. They are losing the young people, and also their kind of economic is shrinking. Politically and strategically, they are facing the very severe environment. So in that sense, we could actually say Japan is kind of gradually declining power. But at the same time, if they actually invest a lot in the AI or the defense technology or technology too, then they could actually become the economic and also military power. So it all depends on what factors we are going to think about, and it is difficult to kind of think about. But at the same time, Japan is now trying to invest more in the technology, so that could actually compensate the cost of the demographic change.
So, Dr. Koga, you flagged the risk that South Korea could reorient and lean more towards China if Japan's weight declines. What would push Seoul in that direction, and what would also stop it?
So the South Korea is actually having the difficult situation right now because of the political or diplomatic situation between China and the United States, and also it faces the threats from the North Korea. China sometimes pressures on the South Korea economically. So in that sense, South Korea needs to actually figure out what kind of stance they need to take. But at the same time, I think South Korea is not going to push too much to the China. I guess they are trying to hedge against the risk of being too reliant on the one particular great powers, and that creates the incentive for South Korea to try to have the more kind of good relation with the Japan, because it is the kind of declining power, but at the same time, then it's not going to threat the South Korea's the security also. So I think in that sense, South Korea is actually not pushed too much to the China or the United States, but they may find some way to improve their ties with the Japan.
Well, good speaking to you as always. Thanks so much for your time. Dr. Kei Koga, the Associate Professor at the Public Policy and Global Affairs Program at Singapore's NTU. And of course, for more on the impact of graying populations on East Asia's militaries, do watch the latest episode of CNA Correspondent tonight at 9:30 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time, or anytime on CNA.Asia or on YouTube. Coming up on East Asia tonight, as Donald Trump focuses on Greenland, China looks to Antarctica, with Beijing reviewing a draft law to boost its role in governing the southernmost continent.
It's a David versus Goliath battle.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a rally we are witnessing today.
On courts usually dominated by the colonial elite, one man shifted the balance.
He was not just a tennis pioneer, he was a sporting pioneer.
A late bloomer who only learned the sport at 21. An underdog who changed history.
To have a racket named after you, it would be like rackets being named after Nadal or Federer.
Then came war.
My grandpa was rounded up by the Japanese.
Thousands never came home. But he did. No one knows why.
I have so many questions.
Who was this champion who filled headlines and who remains such a mystery today? Legend in a Day, 10th January, Saturday on CNA.
Saturday on Japan Hour. Cycle around Shimanami, a small town where true hospitality awaits. Not only do the locals offer you free gifts, they will even cook it for you.
It's really, really good.
While you enjoy the beautiful views of this small town. Japan Hour, Saturday on CNA.
Japan Hour is brought to you by Sumitomo Corporation. MUFG, committed to empowering a brighter future. Zip Air, no fuel surcharge from 216 Singapore dollars. And IHI.
China is moving to boost its role in the governance of the Antarctic. It has drafted an activities and environment law to protect national interests of the southernmost continent. Well, the bill proposes expanding an administrative permission system beyond current scientific expeditions to include tourism, shipping, and fishing. It will apply to Chinese citizens and entities and organizations operating in Antarctica. Well, the bill encourages activities to be carried out in an environmentally friendly and low-carbon manner to protect flora and fauna and preserve historic sites. Now, Beijing says the new bill aims to regulate activity and protect the polar environment, as well as provide strong legal support for China's participation in global Antarctic governance. Well, China acceded to the Antarctic Treaty back in 1983. It made its debut scientific expedition there a year later. 5 Chinese scientific stations have been established in Antarctica so far. Beijing has also been setting its sights on the northern polar continent. The Arctic, home to Greenland, has been under increasing interest from other superpowers such as Russia and the US due to its perceived strategic location and vast mineral resources. Well, lots to unpack here. So for more, let's bring in Chen Jiliang, a PhD researcher at the School of Natural Sciences at Macquarie University, joining us from Sydney. Well, thanks, Dr. Chen, for being here with us. First up, help us understand a little bit more about this new bill about regulating activity, protecting the environment. But what do you see as the real significance of this law?
I think this law is a law that comes so late. We expect it to come much earlier because China became an Antarctic Treaty Consultative Party in the 1980s. And still, this is the first Antarctic law, national law on Antarctica. It is common among Antarctic Treaty Consultative Parties to use national legislation to implement the Antarctic Treaty and the environmental protocol. So for 4 decades, China's Antarctic activities have been governed by administrative regulations. I think this legislation has been just delayed for too long. And I think one drive for this legislation is the new reality that there are many more entities outside the government system that are conducting Antarctic activities. So the internal rules within the government system will not be sufficient anymore. So that was the main drive. And I said it is a delay. I think it is delayed because of the heavy load of the working load of the People's Congress, because Antarctica is obviously not their top priority. So if you look at the current law, most of the provisions are the codification of existing practice. The current draft explains how the existing regulatory system works and formalize and upgrades it. So there may still be opportunities for the public to comment on this and
Sure. But one detail stands out, Dr. Chen, because the bill also applies to Chinese citizens, foreign individuals who organize expeditions within China's jurisdiction, or, So help us understand what sort of precedents, then, does that set for how Antarctica is going to be governed?
Antarctic, the governance of the Antarctic activities mainly go through the national competence authorities. So the current China's competent authority is the Polar Administration. So in this law, it gives the administration a lot of power to give permits to these activities. But the law was not very clear about what does it mean by implement? What if the other countries, the Chinese people, entities just hire other countries' vessels? Does it count as organization? It's not clear.
Yeah, so that's not clear. But what's clear, from what we hear from Washington, is that they're talking about acquiring Greenland for security, right? And Beijing is moving to legislate its own Antarctic activities and influence governance. So do you think, it seems like there is some kind of a polar competition. Do you think it could turn into some kind of a security spiral?
First of all, Antarctica is different from the Arctic. The Arctic, China has a much bigger economic stake there.
Yeah, I was actually referring to the polar regions, just from both ends.
Are more intensive. Yeah. Yeah. So despite both areas are cold, the geopolitical situation is very, very different. China is not a major player in either pole. It is becoming a bigger player in the Antarctic region. But if you look at count the numbers of the Antarctic treaty parties, you see China cannot get the support from the global South countries like it has in the United Nations system. It is still just one of the members in the Antarctic Treaty system.
Sure. Well, we'll certainly be looking out for this space right there. Well, thanks so much for chatting with us. Appreciate your thoughts. Dr. Chen Jiliang, a PhD researcher at the School of Natural Sciences at Macquarie University. Well, as promised, we've got Roland Lim. He is back with us for more business news and more big and bright tech coming out of CES, which, for those who don't know, it is the biggest tech show stateside. What is the latest you have on that?
Well, big tech is about to flood the factories, our wrists, with AI and robots, one step closer to also taking our jobs. The world's most valuable company, NVIDIA, setting the tone at this year's Consumer Electronics Show, unveiling its next-generation AI computing platform at one of the world's biggest tech showcases, plus a strategic partnership with German tech firm Siemens, all aimed at accelerating the deployment of AI into real-world applications.
Well, the industrial AI revolution, it has already begun. And it's picking up steam faster than steam ever did. In fact, steam took 60 years to transform society. Electricity, 30, computers, 15. For AI, we're looking at 7 years, or less before intelligence is embedded in the system we rely on every day.
Lenovo also looking to leverage on NVIDIA's growing might. The world's largest PC maker will partner with NVIDIA to speed up data center setups for AI cloud providers. Lenovo made the announcement at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. It says it'll offer its liquid-cooled hybrid AI infrastructure alongside NVIDIA's computing platforms to help AI cloud providers reduce deployment times to weeks. Its CEO, Yang Yuanqing, saying that its partnership with NVIDIA, quote, sets a new benchmark for scalable AI factory design. Lenovo hoping to establish itself in the industry, also showcasing its AI platform, Kira, concept AI glasses, and an AI assistant wearable device that'll offer users real-time help. Market watchers also weighing the possibility of another NVIDIA collaboration with Hyundai Motor. The speculation said the automaker's shares rallying as much as 15%, hitting a record high. The head of Korea's automotive giant met with NVIDIA's CEO at the sidelines of CES 2026, raising expectations that the companies could partner in autonomous driving technologies. The meeting took place a day after NVIDIA unveiled its new AI autonomous driving platform, Alpamayo, in Las Vegas yesterday. Industry watchers are keen on whether Hyundai, seen by many as trailing rivals in the global autonomous driving tech race, will cooperate with NVIDIA to gain momentum in that area. And robots are no longer something from a sci-fi movie. They are walking, dancing, and serving snacks at this year's CES, one of the world's biggest tech showcases. Chinese firms dominating the sector, with 55% of humanoid robotics companies at the US event coming from China. Kate Fisher reports for CNA from CES in Las Vegas.
A rat hook to the chest. Another one. They're throwing the ring of punches.
Fighting for dominance in the highly competitive humanoid robot market. These machines are showing off their balance and power to potential buyers.
The end goal of developing robots is to have robots work for us, to do the dirty, boring jobs for us so that we don't have to do it. And this is our end goal, but for the robots to do that, they have to develop a lot of capabilities. For example, in the kickboxing competition, we can see a lot of robots to do like roundhouse kicks, but they don't tip over. They're going to be balancing on their own.
Unitree is just one of 21 Chinese robotics companies showcasing their products at CES, more than any other country. From dancing dogs to robotic retailers.
All this tech is making me a bit hungry, but I found Galbot who can get me a snack. Let's go for that, please. Oh, okay. And this robot is already working in 70 stores across China in 20 different cities. Those stores are completely autonomous, serving snacks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this worker never gets tired or sick. The company, oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Galbot. The company also has robots working in commercial factory floors.
Those factories include the likes of Toyota, Hyundai, and Bosch.
Actually, the advantage of the humanoid and AI large model technology in China is going really fast. It also enjoys, actually based on some benefits. One is the manufacturing industry experience in China, and the second is the talent. Our company is based in Beijing, close to Tsinghua and Peking University, and you know the talent in Tsinghua and Peking University is the best in China.
But the talent isn't confined to China. These robotic ping pong players hail from Singapore, as does this guy.
Born and raised on the Singapore floor.
Image's dexterous robot Tomo is customized for several commercial uses, including making medical devices and packing boxes.
It is showcasing the delicate fingers and the hand, as well as all the architecture that we have built into this small unit. Right, it is much more than it's handling the secondary packaging. It can also handle those tiny objects as small as a needle, and it can be as big as a box. So this is designed to adapt to any solution.
This technology may be making strides, but sometimes even robots need a rest as we race towards a future that looks more science than fiction. For CNA, I'm Kate Fisher in Las Vegas.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to the day when I can have a robot to do my housework for me.
Yeah, I hear you as well. We look forward to that day. Thanks so very much, Roland, for that business report. On that note, that's all the time we've got on East Asia tonight for this Wednesday's edition. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia and look us up on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching.